So I don't think I have to tell you that Activision Blizzard is one of the greediest companies out there right now with the way they monetize their games, particularly the Call of Duty series. I don't think I have to remind you too much about Black Ops 4, the way that was monetized with Season Pass and loot boxes and pay to win. I don't think I have to remind you about Modern Warfare Remaster and the way they resold maps and added microtransactions retroactively to a game that didn't originally have microtransactions. Now with the new Modern Warfare, they have tried to mitigate backlash and government intervention by removing loot boxes outright and replacing that with Battle Pass and free content updates and other forms of microtransactions that don't fall under the purview of loot boxes and pay to win and these things that many people adamantly complained about. And admittedly, Modern Warfare's monetization is better than it's been in past Call of Duty entries, but that doesn't mean there aren't shady aspects to it that are worth highlighting and pointing out, because you don't want to give these companies an inch or they'll take a mile. The following information was first reported by website Multiplayer First. Many of you know that kill-death ratio has been a big part of the Call of Duty series. When you're playing a match, you can bring that up anytime. You can bring up the scoreboard and see how you're doing, how many deaths you've had versus how many kills you've had, and that informs your playstyle in large part. But unfortunately, that's something you can no longer do in the new Modern Warfare for some reason. The scoreboard only shows the number of kills and assists you've dished out, but the number of times you've died is only shown at the end of a match. And this is something that Call of Duty fans just don't like. It is such a basic thing that they've removed, and they would like to see this feature return. Unfortunately, as is expected from Activision, there is a price. So here's the article by Multiplayer First, and the headline is pretty self-explanatory. Modern Warfare now lets you see deaths while in-game, but it will cost $20. One of the most baffling decisions Infinity Ward has made to the game is taking out the Modern Warfare scoreboard deaths counter while in a match. This means that in any mode, you can't see how many times you've died in-game until the match is over. Over on the in-game store, the Mother Russia bundle is available for 2,000 COD points, around $20 in real-world currency, which includes the Time to Die character watch that keeps tabs of the Modern Warfare scoreboard deaths for your character. This watch can't be bought separately. So here's what that bundle looks like. It's called the Mother Russia bundle, and it comes with various cosmetics, and the highlight item here is, of course, the Time to Die watch, which adds a feature that was purposely removed so that it can then be sold back at a hefty fee. Now that $20 does give you a bunch of other stuff, but one of the main draws is indeed this watch that re-adds a classic feature of Call of Duty. And there is no way to just buy this item alone at a cheap price. You have to dish out $20 if you want this feature added back to the game. This very basic feature that Activision could easily implement for free if they really wanted to. It's not as if adding a death counter requires a bunch of resources and manpower. It's not difficult to do. All it is a simple HUD change that they're refusing to implement because of monetization goals. And then this article concludes with, being able to see your deaths in the game while the match is going on has been an oft-requested feature by the community and is something every Call of Duty game has implemented until this year's Modern Warfare. Now, one defense that I've seen people give for this is that maybe the death counter was removed so that there would be less toxicity in a match, so that other players wouldn't be able to see your death counter and then trash talk you about that, or so that you as a player don't get discouraged when you're playing a match and you're dying a bunch of times and you bring up that scoreboard and you see that you have way more deaths than kills, which might, encourage certain people to rage quit instead of just keep tracking onwards in this match. So maybe it's a means to prevent that aspect of the game that has permeated the Call of Duty series. But that argument breaks down the second you realize that the feature is being sold back to you anyway. It's something that is being implemented, but at a premium price, at $20 frickin'. If this really were all about reducing toxicity or reducing discouragement on players who might not be performing well in a specific match, then this watch wouldn't exist at all. but the fact that it is actually being re-implemented at a cost indicates to me that this was a problem that Activision purposely created, removing death counters so that people would have to pay up as just an additional form of monetization, an additional way to gouge people for their money. And to further argue against the defense that this was done to reduce toxicity so other players don't trash talk to you when they see your death count, keep in mind that this watch only shows you your death count. Other players cannot see your death count when you're wearing this watch. That information is only relayed to you. So that argument right there is completely nullified. The fact of the matter is that a lot of players rely on that kill-death ratio so that they can see how well they're performing and to see whether they have to readjust the way they're playing. And it informs them whether they have to improve, and it makes players gauge themselves and be introspective about their play style while a match is going on, which is why this is a feature that's been so requested. It's information that a lot of players feel like they need, and it'd be one thing if it was removed for everyone, but now we're learning that people who can spend $20 on such a basic feature get that, and that they're able to get that information, whereas other players who cannot afford to spend $20 frickin' on this watch can't. And then there are others saying, well, this isn't that big of a feature, and it's true, this isn't some game-breaking thing. It's not going to kill the game to not have a death counter that you can look at during a match rather than after a match, but you have to wonder why this isn't something players can just toggle on. Why not give the player the choice of, whether they want to keep this stat on so that they can inform themselves, or whether they want to toggle it off so that they don't get discouraged in the middle of a match. This kind of reminds me of the Assassin's Creed XP booster. This is something that the publisher and developers claim that, well, it's an optional feature for those who want to accelerate their progress faster. But my question is, why not just make this an option players can toggle on or off? Why not make it a feature instead of a separate purchase? The answer is simple. They just want to gouge players for problems that they themselves create so that they can then sell the solution, a common practice in this day and age. I'm also reminded of some of the petty monetization we saw in previous Call of Duty entries, like with Black Ops 4, when they sold a frickin' dot reticle for $1, which is ridiculous. It took no time for them to make a frickin' dot, and they're selling that for $1. There was a smiley face that was sold for a few dollars. Just that whole debacle, you may recall, raised quite a bit of attention due to how laughably ridiculous that all was. And this feels like it's in the same vein. The fact that you have to shell out $20 for one of the most basic features in a first-person shooter. And that's what makes this watch particularly egregious. It isn't just some cosmetic. It gives you information that may affect the way you play the game. It is very much a gameplay feature sold at a premium. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's no denying that Modern Warfare's monetization overall is better than what we have seen in the past, but that doesn't mean that the shady aspects that Activision's trying to sneak in shouldn't be scrutinized, because that sets a dangerous precedent. That's a slippery slope right there for Activision to think that this is okay and then push this further if this ends up being successful. So we still want to call this stuff out in case Activision gets any weird ideas about the future of the series. This is how this stuff gets pushed further and further. This is how the goalpost gets moved. It might happen inch by inch, very slowly, to the point where most people will not notice that progression, but we have seen it happen over the years. And so we don't want this to be the start of something. So yeah, just all around, I think this is complete BS. This is a stain in a game that has otherwise not been terribly scrutinized as far as monetization goes. But this right here is definitely pretty shady. A death counter that you can view in-game should be an optional feature that is implemented in the game. It's one thing if this feature were removed and they had tangible reasons for it, but the second you implement that back and then charge money for it, the intentions behind the feature's removal become much more muddled. So that's one man's take on this whole situation. I'd love to hear what you think about Modern Warfare selling a kill-death ratio viewer for $20 or within a $20 bundle, paywalling a death counter behind $20 in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.